Welcome to Salty Church Online. We're glad you're here. I'm Corey.
I'm Steven.
And we're excited that you've joined us online today.
Hey, we're going to jump into a time of worship together, singing some songs about God's goodness and His faithfulness. We invite you to sing with us.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone to Salty. We're so glad you're here. Would you stand if you're able with us? Do me a favor. Say hello to the person next to you. Maybe give him a high five. We're going to sing. We're going to worship together. I'd invite you to do it with us. Come on. Let's sing together. We worship. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. Come on, we sing. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. You believe it today? There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Come on. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause He hung up on that cross and He rose up from that grave. And my God still rolling stones away. You believe it? There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. And our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Come on, we're gonna sing while there's joy. Sing, we were the beggars, and we were the beggars. But now we're royalty, and we were the prisoners. But now we're running free, and we are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We sing it together, and we were the beggars. Now we're royalty, and we were the prisoners. Come on. Now we're running free, and we are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. You sing it today. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. And our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house. Sing it out. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We're gonna shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. Yeah. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. Oh, let's celebrate it together. Come on. Well, again, we want to welcome you to Salty. We're so glad that you joined us today. We're going to sing together. Come on. Rumors up. And rumors of the Son of Man. Stories of a Savior. Holiness with human hands. Treasure for the traitor. Come on. No ear is heard, no eye sing this truth. A rescue like no other. You are worthy. Come on. You are worthy of your name. You are worthy. You are worthy of your name. Oh, Jesus. Oh. You did not speak, you made no sound. You died for your accusers. Yeah. And as your blood fell to the ground, you redefined my future. Are you thankful for that today? Come on. And all the day you rose, the darkness ran for cover. Tell 'em why. For the King of Kings has claimed his throne. Oh, now and till forever. And you are worthy. You are worthy of your name. You are worthy. Yes, you are, Lord. You are worthy of your name. Oh, Jesus. Come on, no matter how far we run, we can be reminded of his goodness today. You're my author, my maker, my ransom, my savior, my refuge, my hiding place. And you're my helper, my healer, my blessed redeemer, my answer, my saving grace. And you're my hope in the shadows, my strength in the battle, my anchor for all my days. And you stand by my side, you stood in my place. Jesus, no other name, and only Jesus, no other name. You are worthy, yes you are. You are worthy of your name, and you are worthy. You are worthy, you're worthy, you're worthy, and you are worthy. You are worthy of your name, and you are worthy. You are worthy of your name. Oh, Jesus. You're the only one who's worthy today. That's why we're singing. That's why we're singing. Oh, let's sing this one last time. And you are worthy. You are worthy of your name, and you are worthy. Tell him today. You are worthy of your name. Oh, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Let's sing together. And the reign of darkness now has ended in the kingdom of light, in the kingdom of light. now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. You sent the darkness running out of an empty grave, now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. And you sent the darkness running out of an empty grave, now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. And you sent the darkness running out of an empty grave, now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. And you sent the darkness running out of an empty grave, now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. And you sent the darkness running out of an empty grave, now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. You reign above it all, you reign above it all. Sing hallelujah, every heart. There is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. Let all of heaven and the earth erupt in song. Sing hallelujah to the everlasting one. There is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. Oh, you reign above it all. Yes, you do. You reign above it all. Oh, you reign above it all. Yeah. Come on, if you're thankful, can you give up some praise?
Hey, thanks for singing with us. Every week we direct your attention to fill out the connection card.
Yeah.
Our digital connection card is the primary tool to help you get connected, whether you're new or you want to share a prayer request. Just mark your interest in the next steps. Head to salty.org and click connect to fill out that card.
If you've spent any time around here at Salty, you know we're all about getting outdoors, and we love the people in our community. An exciting way to do both of these things is by participating in the first ever Salty Inshore Classic Fishing Tournament. It's a great opportunity to engage someone who would never attend a church service and have fun doing it. The fishing legend Flip Pallett once said, "There are things that are said in the skiff that don't get said in confession." We know it's true, and it's coming up on May 19th and 20th, and it'll offer some serious prizes, swag, food, and more. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm super stoked about it. Head to salty.org/fish for more info.
Every week we take time to connect with God and with each other, continuing our worship. If you're new to Salty, we're going to put a timer up on the screen during which you can do a few things. You can connect with us and others, drop us a comment and say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. Or you can just pray. Spend some time in prayer right now. Fill out a prayer request at salty.org. We actually pray over every individual prayer request each and every week, and we want to pray for you. You can also take communion. Take a moment and just pause. Remember Jesus, his amazing sacrifice, and just give thanks.
Yeah.
If you have questions about communion, you can head to salty.org/communion for more information. Or you can give, and that you can do that at salty.org as well.
Yeah, and you've heard us say generosity changes everything. And our steps of faith through our I'll Go commitments lead to opportunities for steps of faith for others. Generosity changes our faith as we trust and go, and it fuels the mission that leads to life change in the stories of other people. You know, over the past couple weeks, 54 people took this step to be baptized into Jesus. Thank you for helping create opportunity and impact for others. If you missed our baptism weekend, our next one is scheduled May 21st. We want to thank you for your faithful partnership here at Salty. Let's connect.
right, ready to start? I'm ready to start. Here we go. Hey, welcome again to Salty. And for those of you I've never met, I know we got new folks all over the time. My name is Robbie, lead pastor at Salty Church, and I'm excited to be leading and teaching again this weekend. Let me do a little sub-note, little tangent commercial as we get started. I was reminded of this, it was Saturday morning. Some new folks I met wanted to take a picture with me and stuff. It was cool. It was nice. But I just, when I have those moments of meeting somebody and they like want to take a selfie photo for some reason, it's fine. It's all good. But Salty Church doesn't happen without like dozens of staff people and hundreds of volunteers. And I just think about all of our worship leaders, campus pastors, Jacob and Austin in New Smyrna and Flagler, Derek at our sunrise service, all of the kids ministry people, and more. It just takes a ton of folks to make any of this happen. And I get to be here and be up front, and I really am honored by it. But I am one of many who make all of this happen. In fact, so many times people ask me questions, and I'm like, I don't know. I know, but I know who does know. So that's what's important. So with that said, here we go. We get started. We're going to get started. Start here as it's an 8-week series. This is week 2 of 8. And it's, when you don't know where else to go, where do you start? When you have when you're lost, disoriented, what do you do? When you're looking to grow faith or have faith, where do you start? So last week, we started at the beginning. And so I spent a good bit of time talking about how there are a lot of options to build the foundation of your life. Lots of different things you can do, whether it's science or philosophy. You can go it on your own and wing it like a lot of people do. But what we talked about last week and what I said is that Jesus is the foundation. He is the beginning and the end. He is our author and the perfecter. He's Alpha and Omega. And so when we build our lives with Jesus as foundation, that's the best possible way to go. That's the series that we'll be building on. This is week 2 as we move ahead. And so, maybe it's a great season for folks that are new to faith, but also for you want a refresher and things. I think this will be really helpful. And so we move from the Jesus as foundation to another topic. And the topic is one that you'll love. It's super fun because we're going to talk about sin today. They're like, oh no, it's my first time in church. We show up and we're talking about sin, or I brought somebody new. We could be talking about finances and money. We can do that if you prefer, but sin is the topic, and it's not something that we are excited about, but we got to deal with, right? Yeah, I think so. And we come to church and we hear the word sin. That's fine, relatively speaking, depending on how we talk about it. But did you ever think about how often you use the word sin? It's like outside of church, probably not much. When your kids do something really bad, it's like, hey, you sinned against me. It's like, we don't say that, right? Or if you mess something up at work, you go to your boss, you said, hey, sorry, boss, I sinned against the company. It's like, we just don't use the word much. But when you come to church, we're talking faith. Obviously, sin is that idea of, messing something up, breaking something. It's making mistakes, how you want to think through that. But when things get messed up or somebody makes a bad decision, somebody makes a mistake, you got to deal with it in a whole lot of different ways. But as it relates to faith, it's really important. Because there's a time, in our everyday life when mistakes are made, we got to deal with it, right? There's consequences to things. But especially as you think about with God, there's consequences. And that's what's the really hard part when you think about consequences and struggle. So if I said, if I ask you a question, raise your hand today if you ever make mistakes. Yeah, easy. And you're kind of like okay with that. I make mistakes, right? But how many of you have malice in your heart? It's like a little hesitation, like that's a whole other game, right? Because when you make mistakes, things happen. It's like, oops. When things happen and you make mistakes, it's like, well, I didn't intend to, so it's okay, right? If I make a mistake on something, it's like, well, I didn't mean to, it was an accident. But when you choose something, right? When you choose to do something that shouldn't be done, that's a whole other story. It's heavier, but as you think, mistakes, malice, in your life, how do you see those? How do you think about it? How do you deal with it? You know, we live in a world, last one, there we go. I'll try to keep this one good. We live in a world that, especially in popular culture right now, justice is a big word. We could talk about social justice, racial justice, economic justice, it's environmental justice. Justice is a big deal. But justice is about making something right when things got broken. And we like, in a lot of cases, the word justice, especially when something bad's been done to you. I'm all about it. I heard a story a little while back about this. Imagine New Year's Eve, 11:30 at night. You were at a party, it's getting late, you want to get home before the ball drops, whatever, and you're heading home, it's dark, and you want to get home before all the, drunk people start heading home. And then before you get there, though, all of a sudden, sure enough, there's a car coming past you, 3 times speed limit, swerving and going through, and you're like, it scares the heck out of you. And then, fortunately, there's 4 or 5 cop cars, high-speed chasing them down and go get them. You're like, yeah, go get them, because when somebody's doing that on New Year's Eve, it's dangerous. You're putting people at risk. You want justice to be done when something even could happen, much less might have, did happen. But then imagine this, and this is actually a true story. You pick up the paper the next day, you find out the cops caught the guy and let him go. Like nothing, no ticket, no warning, nothing. You're like, what? Like, where's the justice, right? You putting people at risk. Justice should be served when people are messing up and causing harm and all those kind of things. Yes. Keep reading the story. I come to find out there was this guy who, right at midnight, found himself handcuffed leaning over the hood of a car. Fireworks going off as police officers are delivering his first baby, who his wife was pregnant in the back seat as he was driving recklessly to the hospital to try to get her there. And come to find out, all that whole thing was done because she was giving birth in the back of the car. And so fireworks, literally handcuffed to the car, new baby, the cops are cheering, it's happily ever after. And you're like, oh, well, that's okay, right? Well, yeah, because if you were in his shoes, you'd do the same thing, of course. So I'm not going to, who am I to judge somebody for that? But 3 times speed limit, reckless driving, does it deserve punishment? Well, intent makes all the difference, right? Yeah, maybe. So how do you think through that? Again, so I want to be challenging you on this in terms of like how you weigh your own life and how you consider sin, whether it's in the eyes of people or especially and more importantly in the eyes of God. Malice, mistakes, and intent, and all of those kind of things. And so I would ask the question, how is it that you measure whether or not you are a good person? You are clearly a mistaker. You make mistakes, right? You make mistakes, but to make a mistake is an accident of something, so you know your own heart, you know your intentions. And so if you are judging yourself in terms of whether you're good or not good, and based on intentions, well, you're probably just fine. But isn't it the bigger picture, right? So by what standard do you measure whether or not you are good? How do you weigh your own sin? So you think about it from a faith perspective. There's all kind of different ways of considering that. Think about lots of different religious worldviews. For instance, Buddhism, right? Buddhism focuses on understanding the universe and acting, speaking, and living in a right manner with the right intentions. I'm like, well, I kind of like that. Sounds good. Like acting and speaking and living in right manner, trying to understand and being at one with the universe kind of stuff, having good intentions. I'm all about it. And I'm like, yeah, that, I think, sounds good. Right intentions? Well, if you don't like the Buddha thing, then maybe you should think about the Hinduism, because that's even better, I think. Hinduism is about, ridding yourself of bad karma and the effect of evil action or evil intent. So we all want to rid ourselves of evil intent. This sounds right. And Hinduism's even better because they have like literally a million different kinds of gods that you can worship and pray to and that kind of stuff and understand. And based on what that God that you chose wants you to live, you get to live that way, and you try to rid yourself of evil intent by worship. And I'm oversimplifying for sure, but to me that's even better because that's kind of like multiple choice worship. if I got a million choices, I'm going to find one I really like a lot. And it lets me kind of live a certain way that I think will work, right? That seems appealing to me. Multiple choice worship. Okay, well, maybe that's like not it for you. So what about Islam, where Muslims, believe salvation comes from those who obey Allah sufficiently that the good deeds outweigh the bad. And once again, I'm like, I like it. I think I can be good 51% of the time. Most days I got it. Like I think maybe I can do 70%. So that 51-49 is a pretty easy threshold. So let's do that. Right? Well, there's other stuff with Islam. Maybe you don't, all the other things that go along with it. So here's the thing: you don't like Muhammad. So why don't we pick a guy that everybody likes, Jesus, and then mix in a bunch of other stuff, like the 51-49, or we were thinking about with like right intent with Hinduism. Let's just put all those in a bag, shake it up, and let's do that. That sounds really good to me. Couple of problems, though. At some point, being theists, most of us are, I would assume. If you're an atheist, then hey, welcome. Glad you're here and you're watching, okay? But as a theist, you believe in a creator, and so one day you're going to stand before a creator, and whatever people call him, they call him, right? But that creator gets to decide what is right and what is true, and you have to account for how you lived. So what is the truth? And I was thinking about like the multiple choice kind of a thing. If you're going to just build your own faith the way you want to do it and live the kind of way that seems right to you, aren't you honoring mostly just you? Or is it about someone who is greater, that is creator? Right? So there's a count for all of that. So for us, clearly, and I talked about it last week, Jesus is the best starting point to build our life in. And so what does Jesus say about you being good? What does Jesus say about sin? And here's the thing, I don't like it. Right? So let me remind you, Matthew 5, Jesus says, let me tell you, your righteousness, your goodness, right, lack of sin, all of that kind of stuff, your righteousness has to surpass that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. You will certainly not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Like, you have to be better than all of the ones who are great, is what Jesus says. Like, oh, I don't, 59, 40, 49, 51, I got. But that's pretty intense, right? He's like, yeah, you think that's bad? Watch this. You have heard that it is said, this whole sermon, I'll just summarize a couple of points of it. You've heard that it was said, and a lot of people say, whether it's the Old Testament law or all other kind of religions, people say a lot of things, right? Don't murder. Anyone who murders is subject to judgment. The consequences, the punishment, due. Yes. That's what people say. Jesus says, let me tell you, I say, he calls himself an authority in this, I say, anyone who's angry with your brother or sister is subject to judgment. Like, oh, there goes my 51%, right? And it's not even about like killing. Killing is a physical action that results in somebody's death. He's like, yeah, that's easy. Like, I haven't killed anybody in a long time. It's not a problem. Anger, that's an internal thing that, like, he's like, I'm judging not your actions, your heart. It gets worse, right? He says, you have heard people say don't commit adultery, but I tell you, you look at a woman, let's translate that, woman or man, whatever, lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. You're like, forget it. And then and he goes on and he adds the weight to this. He's like, you could look at, Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam and 100 of other kinds of things. And Jesus says, I don't think about this like everybody else does. It's different with me. When you think about like weighing out behavior and pros and cons and all those kind of things, when you think about making mistakes, if you're a mistaker, then you just got to work harder to get better. But if you understand what Jesus is talking about in terms of being a sinner, you never get it right. Not right enough. Zero malice, zero mistakes. In fact, Paul goes on, he said that in Romans 3, all have sinned and fallen short. All. How often? Too many times. All. None of us are good. And he also said later on, he's like, and the wages of sin is death. Consequences. Man, I don't like that. I like the Buddhism, Hindu stuff a whole lot better. Right? If you just stop there and you don't have the whole story and you hear Jesus saying that, you're like, no, I can't do that. But that's not the whole story, clearly. And that's where Jesus, who draws that high standard, brings us to that point of despair. I'll never be good enough. He wants you to feel that way. And Paul, as he talks about it, the wages, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Let's also hear the rest of what he said. And are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that comes through Jesus. Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and a million other whatever people want to believe, nobody says that. He raises the standard far beyond what you could ever hope to attain, and then says, let me tell you how this works. I've come to pay the price. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do? Like, I realize I can't, and then come to find out, if I put my faith in Jesus, then justified. It's just as if I'd not sinned. It's just as if I'm made right with God's eyes. Yes. That's why this Jesus is so compelling, and it's worth building our faith on. And there is no other name but Jesus. I read a story back, I think it's 16, 17, somewhere back in there, about a guy named Joe Cerna. True story. Joe Cerna was a veteran, Afghanistan. Terrible story of just combat. He was in I think in a Humvee. Something happened. He got flipped upside down into like a little creek or something. Of all the guys in the truck, he was the only one that didn't drown slowly. Just terrible stuff like that. You hear the stories, and he survived. They rescued him, and the PTSD and the trauma that he had to deal with, and having all of the combat plus all of his guys dying around him. There's a ton of stories like that. Joe's story is that. And not able to cope and not having the resources, he did like many, which was just turning into drugs and alcohol, primarily alcohol, to kind of numb the pain and survive in the midst of all of his trauma. And over the years, we'd get in trouble and get arrested, and was on probation again for drunk driving and more. He goes before the judge, and the judge is like, hey, you get probation, but you get one more mistake, then, there's punishment in it. And sure enough, he goes to court. He had been drinking, lied about it to the judge, and the judge is like, yeah, accountability. What's going to happen? The problem is with the PTSD, especially for Joe, going in and sitting in a prison cell, claustrophobic, it's just going to make things worse. And the judge knew it. But there's got to be accountability for the ongoing bad choices, although it's understandable why he's drinking all the time. Nevertheless, you're putting your life and other people's lives in danger. There has to be punishment. Regardless of intent, justice is required. Well, in the story, though, the judge name is, I forgot his name, Oliveira. The judge sentenced him, and for this round, he knew because of the PTSD it would be so bad, he gave him 24 hours in jail, which pretty light. But nonetheless, because of the PTSD, knew that it might be pretty terrible. The way the story goes is, though, the judge got off work that day and drove to the prison. Went in to go see him in his jail cell, Joe, and says, hey, open the door. And he got permission and spent the night in jail with Joe. Spent the whole night. The judge went with the guy convicted, spent the whole night with him, and they talked. And as the claustrophobia and the PTSD would rage up, they would talk. And the judge did it because he was a combat veteran himself. He understood. But justice requires consequences. But in the time that they spent together, you think about that, what the impact would be. I love the way he said it. Joe said that, he's a judge, but that night he was my battle buddy. It's powerful, isn't it? And it hints at the story. It's not the same thing. It's not an easy parallel, but it hints at the story of Jesus. And at Jesus, God steps down out of heaven and becomes like one of us. And suffered temptation and more. He knows the stuff that we deal with. He knows what it's like. And he enters into that with us. And then later again, he sends into heaven, but he gives us his Holy Spirit, that you have God's Holy Spirit with you, such that when life gets as bad as it gets, you have somebody there with you if you want it. But then I was thinking about and taking that a little bit deeper in terms of battle buddy and just wrestling with it and thinking about your mistakes. It's one thing, like oops. But what about the other things that you choose to do it and you shouldn't? And things break in your life. You know what those things are. Where's Jesus in that? So then I think about like with the drunkenness. I don't know if that's your thing or not. For a lot of people it is. Temptation and all that. I wondered what it would be like if you invited Jesus into that. Hey, Jesus, come get drunk with me. It doesn't sound right, does it? Okay, it's not alcohol, it's pornography. Hey, Jesus, come watch this with me. Like, to be so crass, you would never invite Jesus to participate in sin with you. That's not what I'm saying, though, is Jesus, I have a choice to make here. I'm prone to doing, hey, Jesus, I'm about to go lie to my wife about, hey, I need you. Gambling, gossip, whatever. There's a million things, right? What is your thing? What is the thing that you struggle with most? And what does that mean to have Jesus as a battle buddy saying, I'm with you, I'm for you, and you don't have to. And the thing is, it's not that we have to we're not inviting Jesus into our lives so that we can be better people. Like mistakers need help not making mistakes anymore. It's not that at all. But Paul says we have all sinned. We're all sinners, and because of what Jesus offers us, that we get freedom and we get forgiveness from it all. It's not about us performing better and being better people. It's I'm nothing without Jesus, so I want to honor you, God, with my life. And in the midst of whatever the temptations are that I have and my struggles with sin, I'm going to invite you into every element of my life because of what you have done, because of the gift you've given me. I want to honor you. And think about Joe Cerna and the drunk driving and PTSD, and I want to follow through that story and find out what happened to him, but I can't imagine that his life's not transformed because the judge spent the time with him in the moment. It's the transformation that we need. We do it, and we do what we do with Jesus to honor him, not to earn him. So I just want to let you sit with that for a little bit here. So the reflection time is, it can be light, it can be easy, sometimes it's heavy. But before we head out and do whatever it is we're going to do for the rest of our day, maybe to sit with some things. Let me let you think about this. What are the implications of you, being a mistaker? Seeing yourself that way. Well, I'm not that bad. I can get a little better at this or that. Versus you being a sinner that is hopeless without Jesus. What are the implications of you, that mindset for you? Because there are times when you slip into that. Yeah, you're in church today and you're a sinner. I got that. But there are other days you kind of fool yourself into thinking, well, it's not that bad and God really knows. And we slip into the justification of our iniquity, malice. Just think through this a little bit. If Jesus is our foundation, it matters. And so think about, what are the implications here? And if Jesus is your hero and he is the one that is in control of your destiny, then what does that mean in terms of your everyday decisions and more? What are the implications? Think about that. If you're here with somebody, talk about it. If you're here alone, pray about it, whatever. If you're watching online, maybe hit pause, kind of sit through this. There are implications to this. And don't forget, this is an 8-week series. We start with Jesus. We're dealing with sin today, and we're going to build on each of the next couple of weeks. This is just today's installment. Spend a little time with this, and we'll come back, and then we'll close up, okay? Let's go. So I would invite you to come back next week. Also, Wednesday nights, we take all of this a whole nother level deeper. Got a lot of conversation that'll happen right here, 6:30 on Wednesday nights over the whole course of this whole series. Last thing is we have, I think there's some barbecue out there tonight, which is awesome to have. Let me just say this, though. We're trying to figure out if we want to continue doing the whole food thing on Saturday night as a part of our ministry. We're running a little short on volunteers. May or may not continue on permanently. We'll see. If you want to volunteer, great, let me know. If not, it's okay. No big deal. But enjoy tonight, and then hang on to your hat. Hopefully, we'll make some decisions about what we do moving ahead. Hey, if you're new to all of this, you got any questions, there's a team back there that says, welcome, start here. I'm going to head back there as well. Love to talk to you. Otherwise, thank you for being here. We'll see you next weekend.